Hi everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to Papagei English, and this is the second part of our fourth session. In this session, we're going to talk about yes, no, not given questions. Now, again, before starting the course, I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel on YouTube, and if you like my videos, like them and leave your comments. All of them will help me to improve the quality of my courses. Now, let's start our today's session. Yes, no, not given questions are very similar to true, false, not given questions with a slight difference that in this case, we're gonna interpret the writer's views and claims rather than factual information. Okay, now let's start and review our tips and go to our example. Tip number 1. Yes, no, not given questions are often in order, more than 90% of cases, but there might be some exceptions. We always assume that the questions are in order, just like as the true false not given questions. Tip number 2. Not given answers often partially relate to ideas mentioned in the text, but which are neither confirmed nor contradicted, or they relate to information you would expect to see in the text, but which isn't actually there. And our steps again are the same, looking at the title, choosing our keywords, and finding the signals and reading around them carefully. Now let me turn on my pen as well and go to our next slide and have our example. Do the following statements agree with the views of the writer in reading passage 3? Okay, I chose a passage 3 because the passage 3 is the most difficult passage. As you know, as we proceed through the test, the passages become harder and the passage 3 is the toughest one. Okay. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is just look at the title, okay? Just look at the title. It's about neurostatics, okay? Now, let me give you a view. Now, I'm going to eliminate these paragraphs because these paragraphs are not related to our today's session. We're going to talk about them in our next session, but these paragraphs are enough for us in our today's session. Now, okay, I looked at the title. It's about neurostatics, but I don't know what the neurostatic is. I even don't have any idea about this title. When you have no idea what the title is, just read some sentences from the first paragraph, okay? That will give you a general idea of your passage. Okay, now I'm going to do it. An emerging discipline called neurostatics is seeking to bring scientific objectivity to the study of art. Okay. But that's enough for us. Now, let's go back to our questions. And as I talked about in previous sessions, we choose keywords for only 2 of our questions. Okay. 4 6 findings contradicted previous beliefs on the function of fractals in art. Okay. Previous beliefs. This is a scientist, and it's easy to scan through the passage and find that as our keyword. Now, question 35. Certain ideas regarding the link between mirror neurons and art appreciation require further verification. Okay, now let's go to our paragraphs and search for our keywords. Let's start with this paragraph, okay? I'm gonna look and scan and find the name of the scientist. Okay. Okay, I found it here. Now I'm gonna read around Alex first carefully. Another experiment. Alex of the University of Liverpool analyzed the visual intricacy of different pieces of art, and her results suggest that many artists use a key level of detail to please the brain. Okay, too little and the work is boring, but too much results in a kind of perceptual overload. According to Force. Okay. And what's more, appealing pieces, both abstract and representational, show signs of fractals, repeated motifs recurring in different scales. Okay, fractals are common throughout nature. For example, in the shapes of mountain peaks or the branches of trees. Okay, it is possible that our visual system, which evolved in the great outdoors, finds it easier to process such patterns. Now, let's go back to our questions. findings contradicted previous beliefs on the function of fractals in art. There is nothing about previous beliefs, okay? So that's not given question. So as you see, even this question wasn't confusing enough, okay? Because there was nothing at all about previous beliefs, and we can definitely answer to question 34 as a not given option. Now let's go to the second one. Find mirror neurons and further verification. I'm gonna look for my keywords and find them and then read around them carefully. Okay, I find it. Then I'm gonna read around this carefully. But in these cases, I usually start and read from the start of the paragraph. That's optional. It depends on based on your way of answering the questions, but it helps me to have an idea about the paragraph. So I do it when I'm doing a reading test, but it depends on you. Test at home different ways of answering the questions, and you will find the strategy that best suits your character and your way of thinking. Now let's just start. It's also intriguing that the brain appears to process movement when we see a handwritten letter, okay? And as if we are replying the writer's moment of creation. This has led some to wonder whether Paul's works feel so dynamic because the brain reconstructs energetic actions the artist used as he painted. This may be down to our brain's mirror neurons, okay, which are known to mimic others' actions. Okay, the hypothesis will need to be thoroughly tested. The hypothesis will need to be thoroughly tested. Through means completely tested. However, okay, now that's for our answer. Let's go back to our options. Certain ideas regarding the link between mirror neurons and art appreciation require further verification. That's true. Okay. Yes. Lots of people asking me in IELTS test what would happen if we write true, false, not given instead of yes, no, not given. It won't be a problem if you write such a way your answers, and your answers will be corrected as true answers. But just act based on the instructions, and in this case, just write yes. But both are correct. Now let's go to our second set of questions. People's taste in paintings depend entirely on the current artistic trends of the period. Okay, people's taste, that's our keyword, depends entirely on the current artistic trends of the period. Now, the scientists should seek to define the precise rules which govern people's reaction to works of art. Okay. Now let's go back to the passage. It might even be the case that we could use neurostatic studies to understand the longevity of some pieces of artwork. While the fashions of the time, okay, that's about the fashions. While the fashions of the time might shape what is currently popular, works that are best adapted to our visual system may be the most likely to linger once the trends of previous generations have been forgotten. Okay, just look here carefully. Now let me read it again. It might even be the case that we could use neurostatic studies to understand the longevity of some pieces of artwork. Okay, now let's go back to our option. I'm gonna read it again in order to understand it carefully. People's taste in paintings depends entirely on the current artistic trends of the period. Okay, but it doesn't only depend on the current artistic trends of the period. Now let me show you. Works that are best adapted to our visual system may be the most likely to linger once the trends of previous generations have been forgotten. So that's a contradiction with this viewpoint in the passage. Okay, so The question 36 is no. Now let's go to the 37. It is still early days for the field of neurostatics, and these studies are probably only a taste of what is to come. It would, however, be foolish to reduce art appreciation to a set of scientific laws. Okay, that's very important. It would, however, be foolish to reduce art appreciation to a set of scientific laws. Okay, now let's go back to our options. A scientist should seek to define the precise rules which govern people's reactions to works of art. No, it would be foolish, and as a result, the answer is no. Let's go to our last set of questions. Art appreciation should always involve taking into consideration the cultural context in which an artist worked. Okay, consideration of cultural context, and it is easier to find meaning in the field of science than in that of art. Okay, now let's go to this set of questions. We shouldn't underestimate the importance of the style of particular artist, their place in history, and the artistic environment of their time. Okay, that means their culture. The importance of a style of a particular artist, their place in history, and artistic environment of their art. That means culture. Abstract art offers both challenge and freedom. Now, that's enough. Let's go back to our questions. Art appreciation should always involve taking into consideration the cultural context in which an artist worked. The answer is yes. And our last question, 39, it's easier to find meaning in the field of science than in that of art. Now let's go to our last question. Abstract art offers both a challenge and the freedom to play with different interpretations. Okay, in some ways it is not so different to science, where we are constantly looking for systems and decoding meaning so that we can view and appreciate the world in a new way. Okay, I've read these two sentences, but as you see, there is nothing about the comparison between whether it would be easier or harder to find meaning in the field of science than in the art. So that's not given. That question is not given. Now let me repeat these sentences as well. In some ways, it's not so different to science, okay, where we are constantly looking for systems and decoding a meaning so that we can view and appreciate the world in a new way. It partially relates to the idea, and there is a partial comparison. It is not so different to science, but there is nothing about whether it would be harder or easier, and as a result, that option is not given in this paragraph. Now, as you see, it was a reading that I chose from passage 3, and in just one paragraph, in just 3 paragraphs, we answered around 6 questions. And as you see, sometimes the passage C won't be very challenging. And if your general English is good enough, you can just answer questions in a very short fraction of time. So be confident and be interested in learning English language and keep motivated in order to master your skills and pass your exam with flying colors. Now let me turn off my pen as well. That's the end of our 4th session. I hope it would be useful for you. Again, if you liked this video, please like it and leave your comments on the YouTube. All of them will help me. Thank you very much. See you around.